With more than 100 years of experience between the four of them, covering Minnesota high school athletics, the Minnesota Sun newspaper's sports editors bring you Sun on Sports.
And welcome back to Sun on Sports. Again, I'm Mike Shaughnessy, joined by my Sun newspaper sports colleagues, John Sherman, Greg Clevin, and Nick Clark. Segment 2 of our football preview for October 2nd is our 3 Classic Lake Conference games, or I should say 3 games involving Classic Lake Conference teams. The one we'll tackle first, John, is a game between 2 teams that aren't likely to attend a cookout together after the game, Edina and Minnetonka.
Well, I think the Hornet cookout would be at a country club, and the Skipper's cookout would be probably out by the lake somewhere. I think you're right. They don't get along. This is a rivalry game. I'm billing October 2nd as the big night of the year in the Classic Lake. We've got Minnetonka taking on Edina. That's a tremendous game. The other game has even more implications for the title. It's Hopkins versus Wayzata. I think we can look for a tremendous game there too. Taking Edina Minnetonka first, a lot is going to depend on Minnetonka's ability to control the ball. They did a good job of that in their 31-30 loss to Hopkins recently. They can do an even better job. Minnetonka plays block and tackle football, very well coached by Dave Nelson and all of his assistants. Edina runs the spread attack, relying on the passing of Danny Glass and the running of Colin Moynihan. So they're a more diverse team offensively than Minnetonka. Parker Weinstock has emerged as a great runner for Minnetonka. He's 5'10", he's 175 pounds, and he loves to hit. And he will get the ball as many as 30 times a game. Backing him up and sharing the tailback position with him is Larry Rice, who's another fine runner. So it looks like Minnetonka's running game versus Edina's passing game. Interestingly enough, last year Minnetonka utilized its big defensive lineman, Bo Allen, who's about 6'4" and 300 pounds, as a fullback. And I think as the season goes on, as Minnetonka wears teams down, I think we'll see more of Bo Allen playing fullback. I look for a really close game. It's going to be a touchdown either way, Edina Minnetonka. It's going to be a great game.
Nick, also on Friday, we have a matchup between Hopkins, a team that scores a lot of points, and Wayzata, a team that hardly gives up any points.
Yeah.
How do you see this one unfolding?
Well, we had this exact same conversation probably exactly 1 year ago from today when both teams headed in, and that was kind of the same scenario. Hopkins was feeling really good. They were a top 10 team in the rankings. They were scoring a ton. Wayzata was by then the clear-cut 1 or 2 team in the state. They had, given up hardly a thing defensively and had been scoring enough offensively to get by. That night, by half, Wayzata was up by almost 40. I have a feeling we could see something similar unfold this year. It's homecoming at Wayzata. It's just their second of what's only 3 home games for the Trojans all year long due to some unbalancing and trying to find games in the 5-team Classic Lake Conference. They're going to be ready. It'll be their first home game since their Week 1 win over Eastview as well, and they performed awfully well that night. They'll be excited to be back home in front of their crowd. So far, so good health-wise. Grant Olson had a scare at Week 1 against Eastview. Afterwards, had some internal bleeding in a kidney and kind of an ugly scenario. Got carted off late in the game. Amazingly, I talked to Brad Anderson after their Armstrong game in Week 3, and Brad said he was shocked. Grant was back Week 2. Has played well since then. He's a big part of that defense alongside A.J. Tarpley, Toby Okiemi, and a handful of other guys that have really been dominant. Through 3 games, that first-team defense is yet to be scored on. Armstrong did get 2 late touchdowns against the reserves for Wayzata's first points allowed defensively all year long. So I think Hopkins is gonna they might score some, but I doubt it's going to be enough. I don't know if the Royals play enough defense. Wayzata's got a pretty good offense when they want to move the ball. They've had the ability to do so, and they're going to be tough. Hopkins might get 1, 2, maybe if they're lucky, three touchdowns in this game. Wayzata is going to score 35, 42 points, and I think they'll win pretty easily.
John, what does Hopkins need to do to have a chance to win at Wayzata?
Hopkins needs to execute its game plan almost perfectly, Mike, and that's possible. I mean, they're a good offensive team with Bill Gregg at quarterback, Dami Mafe as their running back, 6'1", 215 pounds. He's got breakaway speed. He's a track man. The Hopkins receivers have really been coming along recently. If defense wins ball games, though, I've got to give the edge to Wayzata. They've got 3 all-state caliber defensive players at least.
Yeah.
And Hopkins on defense, conversely, is a small defensive unit. Not a lot of size, but they have big play potential. They've got Ben Christopher in the secondary, who's as good a defensive player as there is in the conference. And they've got Gavin Grady, who's a big play man at linebacker. But they are a little bit small in the line. They're even small at linebacker. So I give the edge to Wayzata, but I think Hopkins could surprise some people with how good a game this is going to be this year.
What makes Wayzata so almost sneaky good this year in a way is what they are able to do offensively. Everybody talks about their defense. If they get into a track meet, Wayzata can run. They have a junior quarterback, Sasha Doran, who has just been phenomenal through the early parts of the year. In the Week 3 win over Armstrong, 2 incompletions, threw for 255 yards, 4 touchdowns, and almost seemed to toy with Armstrong when they needed to go to the air. They have a couple running backs, including senior Chris Creighton, who really do a good job. And Brad Anderson, after that win over Armstrong, really complimented the development of his line. He played that night without 2 starters. They were both out sick on his offensive line. Said even despite those losses, he was real happy with the way those guys got the push off the ball. Wayzata's going to be able to score plenty. Their defense is what it is. So I'm with you, John. Hopkins has some fantastic athletes. They can really move the ball when they need to in that spread offense. This just might be a little bit above where they are, though, right now.
Agreed, and I'm hoping that Hopkins plays its A game so it goes right down to the wire, but I could see Wayzata in the homecoming game having a pretty good edge, not only on the field but from the crowd. It's a partisan crowd out there, as you know, Nick, and I think they'll be out in full force for this one because this is basically for the Classic Lake title.
Yep.
Well, also this week in the wonders of a 5-team conference, it is Armstrong's turn this week to play a non-conference game, and they are playing a team that, at least in my memory, I don't recall them ever playing. They're going out to Orono to play the Spartans.
Yeah, I'll actually be there that night, and I'm going to have to do some research to see if this is a game that's ever taken place. I don't know that yet. There's an interesting little rivalry built here between these 2 schools, and it has to do with what happens on a hockey rink. Bruce Johnson was a longtime Armstrong head coach. His son-in-law, Todd Wijan, was the head hockey coach at Orono, is now the head coach at Armstrong, and Bruce's son, Aaron Johnson, a former Armstrong standout, played college hockey at Michigan Tech in Augsburg, is the head hockey coach at Orono now. So Bucky Mears, Orono's athletic director, has a good relationship with some people at Armstrong. This is kind of how this game got worked out, and it might be fun. These Orono is a team that's was extremely exciting offensively, putting up a ton of points the first 2 games. Went up to Glencoe, Silver Lake, and succumb to what the Panthers do, which is shut people out. 3 games in, Glencoe had yet to give up a point. The story stays the same against Orono. Armstrong is improving under first-year head coach Ryan Bartlett. They were really encouraged after how they played against Wayzata. They really did a good job defensively against the run. We alluded to what Wayzata was able to do in the air that night, and realistically, Wayzata was never really threatened at all in that game. It was 34-0, 2 series into the third quarter. But Armstrong was happy with the way they played. They think they're getting better. This is a chance for them to get what could possibly be their first win of the year. And they're the first win in 2 years if you take away the forfeit from the Edina game last year. Armstrong hasn't won a game on a football field in going on 2.5 years now, and they're ready for one. We'll see. This might be their chance. Orono's awfully good. Both teams run the spread. We're going to see a lot of points. It'll be a fun night to be on a football field if you enjoy that kind of football.
Well, thanks, Nick. Segment 2 is in the books. Stick with us. When we come back, we'll have a preview of this week's Northwest Suburban Conference game.
Stay tuned for more Sun on Sports. your insider's guide to Minnesota high school athletics. For the scores and more, tune in daily to mnsun.com/sports. And tune in every Saturday morning to Sun on Sports on AM 950, the voice of Minnesota.